If you're tired of overgiving, of shrinking yourself to be chosen, of feeling like love, peace, or abundance is something you have to earn, I want you to know this. You're not broken. You're just unpracticed in believing you matter. There is a way to live differently. And this is exactly why I created You Matter, an 8-week, soul deep course to help you remember your worth, reclaim your power, and rewrite every relationship in your life, starting with the one you have with yourself. Enrollment is now open. You can find more information on my website, www.lindsaymorlock.com. Come walk with me on this journey, and I'll show you how your worthiness was never up for debate. The world is waking up, and you finding your way here today is no coincidence. The spirit world always has a way of guiding us where we most need to be at the absolute perfect time. I'm your host, Lindsay Morlock, and you're listening to The Guided Podcast, where we explore how the spirit world works on our behalf to guide us along our paths. This is where you'll learn how to live a life that is both conscious and connected, so you can supercharge your pathway to healing and open to life's magic and miracles. Come along this journey to see how guided you truly are. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Guided Podcast. Catherine Ann is here again with us this week as she went into the Akashic Records to extract the energetic theme for the times right now. So, Catherine, I'm going to hand it right over to you to kick us off.
So welcome, everybody. I went into the Akashic Records today to really get a message for our collective. And one thing that's really important to understand about when you're getting messages from the Akashic Records, they're timeless. So they are that recording of all space and time. So whether or not you're listening to this message right when it's released, a year from now, or multiple times, you're going to resonate with it as it's meant to resonate with you at that time. And so I just wanted to give that clarification about the Akashic Record message, because this is not a message that's tied to an astrological transit or necessarily specific timing, but it is timeless and timely when you listen to it. So the message that we have now is the title, the theme they gave me is Rising from the Rubble, Embracing Change and Perseverance. And so the message that they really wanted to speak to us about was it is very likely that whether it's in the global collective, in your immediate life, or something you're just witnessing, that you have been witness to a tearing down, whether it's a weather event that causes damage and destruction, whether it's a political system or a job network or a family network, there is a disassembling of energy right now. And so I really think about that as the concept of the universe abhors a vacuum, with that idea of things have to be dissembled to create space for the new. And that is that in order to then have the new, we must rise from what has just crumbled and embrace that there's change. And it most likely, the change won't be witnessed overnight. It's not a snap of a finger. It's a planting your feet and taking one step at a time in the, okay, and now from here, what? From here, what do I wish to create?
This is powerful. All these images are coming in as you're starting to speak about this. And so the first thing that I was getting, this is Phoenix energy, right? Like the kind of energy of the Phoenix rising, where a lot of times before we are turning into the butterfly, to our last theme, we talked about this concept of metamorphosis anxiety, right? And any metamorphosis really involves dissolving itself. The caterpillar literally has to dissolve itself into goo in the darkness in order to reemerge as that butterfly with wings. And so I feel like what you're talking about is, as a collective, we're burning everything down to the ashes. We are literally dissolving ourselves as a collective into that goo so that we can be reborn and we can rise from the ashes in a completely different way. And one of the things that I think is so important about these types of big energetic shifts is they cause so much fear, right? Because we look at everything, we see what we see, and it's pure chaos. And one of the things that spirit has brought through loud and clear for me recently is when we observe chaos in our outer world, in our inner world, it is purposeful because chaos brings a reordering of things, which is what you were speaking to, right? And so I think that's where we're headed is we're headed into chaos. There are many people already experiencing and in the thick of chaos. And as painful as it may be, there is purpose to it because it's a reordering of things. And so one of the things that Spirit's been talking to me a lot about is our thoughts are incredibly powerful in how we are going to be choosing to move forward and recreate or create a new society one that we actually feel good and confident and excited about where we're headed and what we're experiencing and what we're feeling in our day to day and no matter what is happening around us with our external circumstances, we have the power to be at peace right now. You have the power to feel better no matter what your circumstances are. You do have a choice to feel better right now, but it's a choice. It's something we need to consciously choose because if we choose to stay steeped in our lower level emotions, we just keep creating more of that. And then that's not to say that we're just to ignore lower level emotions and just be patty positive in all the ways. That doesn't work. You have to validate and acknowledge the depth of pain and hurt and sorrow and grief and fear and any other emotion that you're feeling. You need to be with it fully and really feel it and release it in order to even find your way back to a place of feeling like you're on solid ground. And I think that is how we create the level of emotional safety we need within ourselves in order to be able to focus in a more positive way.
Absolutely. And then the thing I think that's really important about what you said about how powerful our thoughts are in creating our reality is there's this concept that I've learned through listening to Esther Hicks, Abraham Hicks. She talks about, are you flowing downstream or are you paddling upstream? So if you're in the universal flow, you're flowing downstream and it carries you around the rocks and over the rapids, but in a flow. If you are going against the stream, imagine that image, you're struggling and potentially risking drowning, not being able to get your bearings because you're fighting against the flow. And I think the reason I want to speak to that is that I really can correlate this to when we were experiencing the lockdowns and the pandemic. And often there was this discourse between, I just can't wait to get back to the way things were versus the new normal. And I really feel that that's an important thing to contemplate right now because trying to get back to the way things were when the universe is going through this very powerful, like non-negotiable period of disintegration and takedown in order to create new. If you're trying to return to what was, you're swimming upstream. You're not creating in the new. And so even though there's that grief of loss or loss of just the way things used to be, or the fear of the unknown of where you're going, there's that also need to understand that if you can embrace the change, embrace the flow that you are being guided through, that's where that new day comes from. And those things that were meant to carry on with you will be there, and most likely in brighter and better ways. But if we are not embracing this change and paddling upstream and trying to keep our head above water, it's basically a first class ticket on the struggle bus. I'm refusing to look forward. I'm only going to look back.
It is hard. And I think I want to reiterate some really important things you said. When we're talking about emotions, endings are sad, no matter what they are. So, whether you are someone who is just involved in California with your house burning down, or you have been involved in some other natural disaster, maybe you're someone in this country who is feeling personally attacked and marginalized by the policies that are ending and jobs are being stripped away. I think everyone can look at and point to something in the collective right now that might leave them feeling personally victimized in some way. And what I want to encourage people to think about is feel the hurt of whatever you're feeling, feel the sadness of whatever is ending, but empower yourself to move through that feeling of victimhood, move through the anger, move through all of the emotions to find a place where you can ask the question, how is this happening for me versus how is this happening to me? Because there's an important shift in our perspective when we think that something might actually be happening for our highest and best. One of the messages that Spirit has been bringing through loud and clear lately for me is all about loss and sacrifice. And the losses and sacrifice that we perceive in our lives, you might even be losing an identity. You might be letting go and shedding old belief systems within yourself. You might have to let go of your codependent ways. You might have to let go of addictions, right? There's so many things that we actually need to let go of. And even if the changes are positive, that doesn't mean that we don't grieve them. We very much do. And I think that's what people need to be aware of with grief, that even if we are losing something that is ultimately for the best, we will still grieve it. And so Spirit has said without loss and sacrifice, humans rarely change. And so, as unfortunate as the human condition might be for that to be a truth, I think that's what happens, right? Like loss and sacrifice really create space for something much better to emerge. And so, one of the things that I've really had to embrace lately is like, what is this loss in my life actually creating space for that's going to be even better than what was there in the past? And I think that to me feels so much better to wonder, to imagine, to be able to play a little bit with what does my best life look like and how do I get to sit in that imagination and allow that to drive my resolve, allow that to drive my perseverance, allow that to drive what we are creating in this world. And can you imagine the ripple effect if, as a collective, as individuals, we started taking our tragedies, our losses, our sacrifices, and really allowing ourselves to shift our perspectives to like, wait a minute, what if this is happening for something better than I could ever dream up in my imagination? There's possibility there.
I really love that. And I feel like the way you said it is the perfect reframe of a statement that people will sometimes say that can ruffle feathers, which is everything happens for a reason. When someone has something very challenging happen to them and someone says, well, everything happens for a reason, it feels dismissive. It feels like there's no need to feel sad, no need to feel worried. It all happens for a reason. And it's very invalidating. But then the way you reframe that was, yes, feel the feelings, the fear, the sadness, whatever it is, the worry, feel the feelings, and be open to the possibility of what this could be bringing in, even if you can't see it amidst the deep emotions you're in. And I think that that is something that it's very challenging to make sure that it's walking a tightrope between I need to feel everything that this is bringing up for me. I need to process it. I need to allow it. I maybe need a day under the blanket watching some Hallmark movies with some popcorn. I need to let myself feel it and release it, and yet not permission to marinate in it. There needs to be this, the spirits reminding me that when I was in the records, they said, and you have to pull yourself up by the bootstraps. And just one boot at a time, you pull yourself up by the bootstraps and you say, okay, now I'm taking a step. And that's a really important thing to know is that even in all of the optimism of something better than we can ever imagine is possible on the other side, often you're not going to feel that while you're persevering to that place. It's the perseverance of saying, I'm pulling myself up by the bootstraps. I'm taking the next guided step. And in that step, I'm going to trust I'm being guided and supported as opposed to I'm just going to curl up on the couch.
Yeah, you're making a really important point about not marinating in your feelings. And I want to spend a little bit of time diving into that because we are not taught in this society what it means to truly feel your feelings. And so most of us are taught to think our feelings, right? So if we are thinking about all the reasons we're mad, all the reasons we've just been victimized, if we're blaming and shaming other people, if we are thinking about all the things that are making us sad, you are not feeling your feelings. You are thinking them. And that's really important to understand the difference. When we tell you to feel the sadness in your body, what I'm speaking to is where is the sensation of that emotion physically located? Sadness might feel like a heaviness in the heart. It might feel like pressure in the chest. It might feel like a melancholy or like a heaviness or a slowness in the body, right? It can feel like anything. And if you Google list of sensation words, if you're particularly disconnected from your body, you will find a list of different sensations to help you start to tune into this. But it's so important to feel your bodies because emotions actually only last about 90 seconds in your body. So if you allow yourself to literally just be with the physical pain or sensation of whatever it is you're experiencing and breathe through it, it will move through your body. The reason that we marinate and keep perpetuating these emotional states that don't serve us is because we keep thinking about all the negative thoughts that continue fueling negative emotion in our body. And this is why Spirit says you can feel better now. This is where mind strengthening activities, where is your mental focus going? Where are you placing your attention? I used to be someone who literally focused all day on all the reasons my life wasn't going the way I wanted it to. And I was depressed, I was anxious, I was miserable. The more I have learned how to quiet my mind, and by the way, that didn't just come from meditation. As a breathwork practitioner, breathwork, especially for people who have busy minds and have a hard time meditating, breathwork is an active form of meditation, and that physically clears emotions from your physical body. So I think this is where it's really important for people to tap into what are your forms of meditation? Some people, maybe it's yoga, maybe it's going for a run, maybe it's boxing at the gym and physically moving it out of your body. For some people, maybe it is meditation and really being present with those emotions. Maybe it's breath work. But I think in order for us to feel emotionally safe, we need to show up for ourselves like we are our own best friend. And if you're going to sit there and validate for someone else, of course you would feel this way. Anyone would feel this way. Do that for yourself. Because think about it. If you're befriending the inner bully in your head, you are not creating emotional safety for yourself, right? Are you going to call that friend who's going to tell you that you're a whack job and you've got absolutely nothing to contribute in the moment that you're down, right? You're not going to, but we kick ourselves when we're down all the time. So don't do that. This is how we build resolve is by finding the stillness within ourselves so we can not only stay connected to what the truth is, but also to give ourselves space to know how to follow our intuition and hear the whispers of our heart. But it's really important for purposes of resolve. Like when we go through massive change and transition in our life, it is physically exhausting. And spirit is just pointing me to times in my own life where I have felt, I call it soul weary. Like I feel it on a cellular level that my soul is just exhausted. And that feels like the energy that people might be experiencing, like your soul is just exhausted. And when that happens, one of the quickest and easiest ways to rejuvenate yourself is literally to be still and call upon spirit to literally refuel your body, your mind, your soul. And being in that stillness is surprisingly effective at restoring that soul weariness.
So beautiful. Just to add about the concept of, would you call that person who is going to bully you and when you're down? But yet that is what we do internally, right? When we're beating ourselves up. And my really good friend will say to me, "Stop being so mean to my friend." And she's talking about the way I talk to myself in my head, right? Stop being so mean to my friend. And in this learning how to self-soothe and process emotions and connect, one of the things that really helped me was being a parent and equating, would I treat my child the way I'm treating myself if they were going through what I'm going through? And absolutely not. If my daughter is struggling with something, I'm not going to kick her while she's down and, figure it out, toughen it up. None of these things, right? Raised, I'm Gen X. I was raised in some of these concepts, but we have evolved. And this is not the way we're talking to our children. It's not the way we need to be talking to ourselves, our inner children. And so, actually imagining, if this were my daughter going through this, what would I be saying to her? Really helps me when I'm having a hard time getting out of my own head. It really helps me be kinder with myself. It helps me have more patience with myself. And it helps me also sometimes realize maybe I'm making a small problem into a big problem or a big problem into a small problem. And I need to readjust how I'm processing something. So that's another strategy that has really helped me, is looking at how I would talk to a child in these hard times.
I love that. And as a single person, right, not having any children, one of the things that I do is I have a picture of myself at the age of 4 in a handy place because to your point, I look at that picture of that little girl and I think, would I be saying to that little girl the things I say to myself? And the answer is no. Even though I know that picture is me, that really helped me to change my own self-talk as well. So I love that you brought that up, and that's another strategy if people don't have kids, just picture your inner child, picture yourself at a young age, and why would you wanna speak to that little person the way that you're speaking to yourself as an adult? So I think that's really, really important. The other thing that spirit is flashing me to as we're having this conversation is also with regard to how we find our way forward. And one of the things that they're speaking to is this concept of really being present with whatever is in the moment fully and recognizing that what currently is not what will be. And so we can fully be with any of the emotions of what we're experiencing right here, right now, but if you do not desire your current circumstances, that is not where you want to focus. You want to reach for the better feeling thought, right? And sometimes when you're in a really hard place, it's hard to reach for that better feeling thought, right? And so you want to go to kind of like the what ifs. What if I just felt a little bit better? Wouldn't that be nice? It doesn't have to be something that's so unbelievable. But I think using the phrase, what if this, what if this, what if something just surprised me today to make me feel a little bit better and delighted me? It doesn't have to be a massive shift. But the more focus we can bring to what we actually want to be experiencing really helps the creation process and moving us towards what we want. So I think it's important for humanity to understand that we're in a matrix of creation and we are powerful creators, but we're not connected to how powerful we are. And so we are so powerful that we can create negative experiences, we can create positive experiences. And now I'm not blaming anyone. I'm not saying that if you are in some dire situation that you created it, but we have a lot of power in terms of creating how we want to show up and how we want to change our circumstances. And it is such a more empowering place to be, to find that power within ourselves. And that power is to be at peace no matter what your external circumstances are. That peacefulness is what allows us to stay steady no matter what storms are happening around us.
Beautiful. And it's funny because after going into the records later in the day today, I kept getting this one lyric from the musical Rent, literally one of my all-time favorite. I know it word by word. And as you're talking about coming into this place of peace, I feel like this is where they really want me to say this lyric, which is the opposite of war isn't peace, it's creation. And that's where maybe within whatever's going on, whether it's happening in your immediate reality, in your sphere, or you're witnessing it externally, that feeling of war, that feeling of unrest, protest, discontent, it might be hard to go into a place of peace. But going into a place of creation can move that energy. And I feel like they can walk hand in hand. Like that peace can come from the act of creation and creation can grow from peace. It's like they are they have this symbiotic relationship. But both peace and creation are leaps and bounds a higher vibration than anything else that you could be stuck in.
Yeah. And I am being brought back to a meditation that I did this morning. And as I was meditating, I found myself just like rehearsing a conversation in my head with someone. And I got this feeling of like, oh, wouldn't it be so nice to have that level of intimacy? And oh, wouldn't that feel good to have that level of safety in this? And then I was like flashing to my business and, ooh, wouldn't that be nice? And wouldn't that be fun? And in that moment, right at that particular time, I was aligned with all of the possibilities of the things I want to create. Are those things here right this second? No, but it teed off my day to connect me with the ways I already feel right now, the ways that those images or those things were making me feel in the future. And that's how we create more of that is by bringing in those feelings now, right? So if you're trying to create a romantic partnership in your life, focus on the areas of your life that you're already partnered and it's going really well, right? Like maybe you have an amazing partnership with your animal, right? That's going really well. Focus on that connection, focus on that like loving energy that's already available to you. If you're trying to create more abundance, where else do you have abundance in your life? I know for me, I'm like, I have an abundance of time. I have abundance of resources. I have abundance of friendship right now. I have an abundance of ideas coming in for different things I want to create. Like there is abundance in so many ways that I'm already experiencing. And so we can choose to focus on what is going right in our lives, even in the face of things not going right. And when we focus on what is going well, it's inevitable that we will continue to create that. And even as a collective, I think spirit is encouraging us to really look at what is happening in the world and bringing in more of how we would create on an individual level to create for humanity too. What is the world we want to be experiencing? How do we want to feel about our employment laws? How do we want to feel as opposed to focusing on everything that's going wrong? because we can't find solutions if we are in the vibration of nothing works. If we're not a vibrational match for the solution, if we are committed to believing it doesn't work, even if what's working, not working is true, we cannot see the solution at the same vibration that the problem is created. We have to elevate. And that's what we are being called to do. And that requires bootstrapping and really that resolve because it can be a wearisome process.
It can. And I love all the what ifs because spirit keeps showing me like a big whiteboard in front of you and it's just been erased. Whether you did it or someone else contributed to something being erased with all the eclipse season that has happened, that's a lot of endings and beginnings. And so we have a blank slate. So, what do you want to create on that blank slate? And I keep getting this image of when you're in a brainstorming session and you're writing stuff all over the board, not everything that comes out is going to come to fruition. But that process of imagining and brainstorming is such a creative, uplifting, inspiring place to be that maybe only one thing on the board comes to a fruition and you're ecstatic about it. Or maybe it's just the steps you needed to take to open up the flow of energy to allow possibilities in. And I feel like they just keep wanting us to realize that this is about it's a blank slate. What do we want to create? We have the opportunity to imagine the life we want and bring it into form. And yes, it will take some perseverance. We will have to have that dedication to sitting in that space of imagining, that space of what if, that space of possibilities, because you have to continually be doing that in order to keep moving the needle forward. And then having that understanding that in doing that, there's nothing that you can't overcome because you're moving forward. And understanding that for some of us, we may see that that path involves a heavier level of struggle or kind of a bigger reality of that slate being wiped clean. And for others, it's more of an internal journey, or maybe you're a helper. You know, Mr. Rogers said in times of emergency, of tragedy, look for the helpers. And maybe you're a helper for somebody in their life. Or maybe your spirit team, your angels and guides, who are always your helpers, are asking you to say, let us help. Let us imagine. Because there are always helpers, and the helpers are the bright light. And the helpers help you remember that you are the bright light too.
And I think one of the things that they're flashing me to right now is just to remember that you have 100% success rate of moving through everything in your life so far. And so during the times that we feel like we're not going to make it through this, we're gonna, there's only one way forward and that's through, right? We can't unfortunately hit the fast forward button on things that we don't want to be dealing with. We have to move through them. And when we come out the other side, it is often so much more beautiful than we ever could have imagined. But getting through the hallway, right, to that point where we see all these doors open and allow the new life to unfold can be trying. They just give me this imagery of what happens when we're planting seeds, and those seeds, they take hold in the darkness. Those seeds go in the earth, they're covered up, they're in the dark, and the sunlight comes through and they're watered. And those, it's a lot of work for those seeds to break open and push through the surface in order for those flowers to bloom. And that's, I feel, the energy of what we're really experiencing. Like, it is painful for a caterpillar to morph out of that cocoon and become the butterfly. It's work, right? It's work for those seeds to really blossom. But what seeds are we going to plant in the face of the rubble, right? If we have this blank slate, if the ashes are all that's left, what do you want to rebuild? even bigger and better than before.
So, two things keep coming in. One is the faith that the gardener has that when they planted the seed, if they keep nurturing it, it will sprout because it takes time. It doesn't sprout overnight. And you have to have faith and perseverance and consistency of nurturing that in order to see it sprout. The other thing, and I feel like this really goes back to that idea for those of us who are parents or who have that inner child that just needs a little bit more cajoling to trust this, they keep bringing in the going on a bear hunt where I can't go over it, can't go under it, can't go around it. I've got to go through it. And that understanding that you cannot fake your way through this process. I feel like as a collective, we signed up for this because we're here. That's the evidence that we signed up for this, right? Because we are here. And so what we signed up for was to navigate through these changing times and how we do that and the level of struggle is solely up to us, but understanding that we have to go through it. And by going through it, we get to the other side of whatever it is that we're being asked to overcome.
Yeah, I love that. And to add on to that, I'm being reminded of a saying that my coach always says to me. She's like, Lindsay, are we watering the new garden or are we watering the old garden? And so think about if you're changing ways of being, if you're changing your thinking patterns, if you used to be negative Nancy and now you're trying to be more positive, we have to water the new garden. We have to water the garden that we want, not keep feeding and fueling these old patterns that don't serve us anymore. We have to water the new garden.
Yeah, and it's the thing also is I don't want to be Pollyanna about this and say you're going through a lot of struggle. So smile, don't you
Right.
worry. Because if you think about, I don't remember what this is called, but there is literally a scale of your emotions and the vibrations they have. And I'm going to get this wrong, but like anger is higher than grief or whatever. And then joy is higher than whatever. And so even if you are moving, maybe not to the woohoo highest level, as long as you're moving your way up through the stages, right? You know, they say like the stages of grief. As long as you're moving your way up the emotional scale to higher and higher vibration, you'll get there. And so it's okay that maybe this isn't a one and done. While spirit will always remind us we have that opportunity. We have the opportunity to move through these hard emotions much quicker than we typically allow ourselves. We also need to give ourselves the compassion. One, if that's not a practice you already have, you're working on it, and that's okay. And the other is understanding that as long as you're moving up that scale, you're making progress.
Yeah. And I think too, this is where reach out, get help, ask for support because there are ways of being in the world that we are being called to step into that aren't as familiar. And to Catherine's point, you can move through this stuff much faster than you might think, but we all need help sometimes. And so don't be shy about reaching out if you feel called to particular healers and practitioners. Catherine and I both do this work and work with people in different capacities to help with these kinds of things. So please find your people, find who can be a support for you to help you be your best self and find your best and right life, because that's what we're ultimately being called to build. So it doesn't serve us anymore to keep doing things in an old way, especially when the old way doesn't work. We don't want to create more of the same. That's why it's like, thank goodness things change because they don't have to stay the same. We don't want things to stay the same, especially when they're broken, especially when they don't work. And so find the people who can really help you step into your most purposeful life and support you through whatever time of challenge or struggle you might personally be facing. So, with that, Thank you all so much for listening to the theme. We would love to hear from you all. If you're resonating with this information, if you know someone who would benefit from it, please share it far and wide. And we will look forward to speaking with you all soon. Bye for now. Thank you so much for listening to the Guided Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, I would be so grateful if you would share it with a friend or even leave me a review so we can ensure that it makes its way into the ears of listeners who need to hear these messages most. Until next time, may you remember how guided you truly are.